Welcome to another episode of the now twice weekly Free Press Live, coming to you from the Free Press newsroom in Midtown Manhattan. I am Michael Moynihan. We have, of course, a fantastic show for you today. But again, we don't have Batya. So sitting to my left, to your right, is this time is a man. We've always had a woman, but this is a man this time. The great Mike Pesca, journalist, host of the Gist podcast, and also, we were just talking about this, host of a new YouTube series with the Comedy Cellar, or just shoot at the Comedy Cellar?
It is with the Comedy Cellar.
With the Comedy Cellar,
Cone
called
Comedy.
Funny You Should Mention.
Yeah.
Okay,
you got to get past the pun in the title.
I
it
know,
really is. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to say that it's terrible, but the show's great. And also today, we have Jonathan Conricus, who is a retired lieutenant colonel in the IDF and a former spokesman of the IDF, currently a fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, who is going to join us from Tel Aviv to discuss the killing of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. People pronounce that very differently, by the way.
The Yahya and the Yah.
So I'm just going to just make a noise
Yahya.
and say Sinwar.
Yeah.
Also, Free Press reporter Rupra Subramanya, who will join us to talk about her latest investigation into debanking, which is what you think it is when financial institutions deny access to customers because of their politics. Also, Free Press reporter Francesca Bloch is going to talk through her reporting on a pro-segregation black nationalist who happens, by the way, to be an advisor to vice presidential candidate, no, I'm kidding, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, that has raked in nearly $20 million in donations from the government and various non-profits. And finally, the ghost of Batya is back here to break down why the Harris campaign is flailing with men. I can't wait for that one. I think Batya's going to have some opinions. But first, Mike, let's talk about this Kamala Fox News appearance, right?
Yeah.
She has been ignoring tough media, right? She sat down with Bret Baier. Kind of a tough interview.
Sure.
I think he's tough to everyone. A contentious interview. Let's have a little look.
Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is
tell
about
pollsters,
turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
You've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
That's a very weird
You and I both know what I'm
Right.
talking about.
I don't know. I literally don't know what she's talking about there.
Donald Trump has been running for office. Okay.
Gotcha.
Look, this is, you've heard about this, right? This is a couple days old. But I wanted to come back to this because a few things that are driving me a little insane about it. And the thing that's really driving me insane about it is the general media reaction, not to her answers as such, but to the interview itself. So I think, because I don't like working hard, I took about 40 seconds and just went to Twitter and found these headlines. It didn't take long. Here's, let's go to that. Can we go back to that first one there? This is, we're going through all of them at once. The first one, the Daily Beast. Can we get that one back up there? This is one I really liked. That's the New York Times. We got a lot of them there. Should I just make them up at the same? Yeah,
I can't read it because it's too far away, but it'll be like Bret Baier, bullies, Kamala,
it's like
interrupt.
Whines, this is my favorite. This is the one. Whines about the interview, and then there's a subhead there about how aggressive he is. The next one I think is from MSNBC, which of course is the outlet that gave us the Stephanie Ruhle interview.
That's the template of how to do.
Which was a bit of slow pitch softball.
Right.
And all of these basically say the same thing. I'll read you one that I have on my phone. David Plouffe. You know David Plouffe.
Sure.
Is it Plouffe?
It's souffle because
David
he is.
Plouffe.
Yes, so he's a Democratic operative.
Yes, big mocker in the Democratic
Sure,
Party.
important Obama advisor.
I will just read you the
and therefore a press expert.
And a press expert, I will just read you the first half of his tweet. Kamala Harris handled an ambush Fox interview.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Now,
she thought she was going to be on the NFL show with Terry Bradshaw. And boom, Bear shows up, ambush style.
And look, this is kind of insane to me. Because as, you know, the MSNBC headline, which it's more sparring match than interview.
Well,
this is what an interview is, people.
Should be.
And I don't know if anyone has noticed that Kamala Harris is trying out for the job of the most powerful person on earth. And if you can't handle a couple of, you know, tough questions from Bret Baier, and here's the thing, when you get used to just these softball interviews, right? These ones from the Call Her Your Daddy or whatever podcast, I don't know what it's called, and Stephanie Ruhle, and you get some pushback. The thing that was pointed out by the last person who sat in this chair, Mary Catherine Ham, on Twitter yesterday, she went back and watched Bret Baier's interview with Trump. And she said he interrupted him 25 times in the first like 5 minutes. This is a style, and this is what people should do. It should be an interrogation. This is not slow pitch softball in politics. Ain't beanbag, right?
Yeah, that's what I said on my show, a non-beanbag interview. That's what we need. The American people do need answers to many of these questions. This was the first time she was ever asked, when did you know that Joe Biden was not qualified to be president?
Correct.
Like, that is a question that needs to be asked in some way, in some format.
Which she didn't answer, by
No, it was kind of unsatisfactory. I'd also have to fault him for how he asked the question, which was in the middle of, she was going on a Trump riff. He said, wait, let's pull you back to this question about Biden. She said, why are we talking about Biden? Let's talk about Trump. There are other better ways to ask the question. Like, the American people are questioning your judgment. You're going to be sitting nose to nose with Xi and Putin and Olaf Scholz. Here was a poor assessment of Joe Biden. Give the quotes that where she called him extraordinary right after the debate. How do we know? How do they know that you have the judgment to assess important world figures? And then I think she couldn't really dodge it as well.
There's also the thing that us people in media world really have to take a step back. Stephanie Ruhle, who did interview her, I mean, that's a very generous characterization of it.
Look, I'd give that a B-. I know that you hated it, but there was
she asked a couple. I mean,
value, some value.
There's some value. She used to work at Goldman Sachs or one of these investment banks. She's married to an investment banker. She does have a good sense of economics, and she did ask some good questions about trade and why the administration has continued some of Trump's tariff policies if they hated them so much. But prior to that, she was on Bill Maher's show, and a clip that kind of went viral. She was talking to, I can't even remember who.
The New York Times, Bret Stephens.
Was it Bret Stephens?
Yeah, because Stephens had written, I need more convincing. And her thesis
is you know.
Yes.
You know what she believes. The point is not us. The point is the people out there who are, say, undecided voters, or somebody who's like vacillating between, you know, maybe I can vote for a Republican this time because I'm not sure if I know what she believes. We might know, right? Because we've been paying attention to this, reading the tea leaves for years. But most people don't. So you have to submit yourself to these interviews. It's part of the job application.
It's interesting, you just saying, you know, Brett, what I'm talking about. And we played the clip of Harris saying, you know, Brett, two Bretts, what I'm talking about. I think maybe people in that bubble milieu mindset, what do you want to call it, they think everyone agrees with them. And so the importance of reaching out to people who don't necessarily agree with you, like with a somewhat contentious interview, is super important. Now, I don't see Kamala Harris specifically whining about this interview. During the interview, there was a little bit of whining about how dare you ask the question.
Yeah, and interrupt me.
But I think what's going on is that the Daily Beast and MSNBC, they're into politics as hobbyism, and they're playing to their crowd of the how dare you ask the question about transgender surgeries with prisons, how dare you ask a question about the families of people who've been murdered by illegal migrants. And it's great, but Harris knows, and I think Plouffe knows, that while there is a performative aspect to saying, oh, what a terrible interview for even asking that, it's great for the campaign that she was asked that. Because if they drop $20 million, her figure, worth of ads about transgender surgeries, she needs a chance to say something about it. What she said was a bit of a dodge. I'll follow the law. Well, as president, you make the law. But it's actually, it was a good interview for her. I don't think it was a good performance. I think she would literally come come out of that saying, I did what I needed to do. Now, others would say you didn't convince the Fox audience, but I don't even think that that was necessarily her intended audience.
Yeah, and if you're coming out of this saying she did such a great job, as, you know, this was a Rorschach test if you were on the left or the right, people saying it was terrible.
Right. But those people who already, their votes are
they're baked in.
Right.
But if you're saying she did a good job, then in some sense it is a good interview because she's allowed to do that and, you know, make the case. And I think in certain places she did okay and others not so much.
I agree. They didn't say that about the View interview, which was not a good job because she had unforced errors. And I understand why Bear jumped in. Her very first answer about a tough question on immigration was something like, well, I think it's important to have these discussions. And he was just not having it. Of course it is. That's why I put it on the table. So he was a little triggered by her evasion of his questions.